Welcome to the Body and Beyond podcast with Alice and Gina.
A podcast sparking discussion on all things health, mindset, fitness, goals, and motivation.
We strive to help you to boost your confidence, to take the lead in your own life, to back yourself, and to step into your full potential. Body and Beyond is proudly sponsored by The Seed Cycle. The Seed Cycle is a beautiful female-founded Australian company. Seed cycling is a natural methodology that you can use to support your menstruation and your ovulation, and it can even be used to support your hormones through perimenopause and menopause. If you'd like 50% off your first month subscription, use the code BODY and BEYOND at the Seed Cycle website, www.theseedcycle.com.au.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Body and Beyond podcast with myself and Gina. And today we are going to be recording part 2 of our topic, habits. So in episode 11, we went through part 1 of habits. And Gina, what did we chat about in that episode?
Yeah, so in part 1, we spoke about the fact that you have the power to adapt, choose, or evolve your habits. Also the fact that you're not defined by your current way of being, your current habits, and also how important identity is.
Yeah, so today we're going to just expand a little further on that basically. So we're going to be talking about the importance and the importance of meaning behind your habits and the 4 stages of habit, how to implement a new habit, how to adjust and break down habits that you want to move away from, and also how to maintain habits when life gets busy. So we're definitely going to go into a little more detail today around the topic of habits.
Yes. So before we get started today, I really wanted to elaborate on the importance of meaning. So the importance of having a really powerful why, and why it is that you're choosing to make a new habit or to break an old habit. So when you're thinking about the meaning behind your goals, it's so important to dig super deep and reflect on why you want to implement this habit or make the change. So I don't know, what's a simple example? So going to the gym. If someone's high level basic meaning is just going to the gym, there's nothing deeper behind that, then it's going to be easy to not execute on going to the gym. Whereas if you were to dig deep and go, okay, why do I want to go to the gym? What's important to me about that? Oh, okay, I want to build more confidence. I want to love my body more and be more confident. And then if you dig even deeper, why do you want to do that? Well, actually, you might be single and you're wanting to find someone and find the love of your life essentially and create a future together and have babies, etc., etc. That's a simple example, but that would be a much deeper, significant reason as to why you would execute on building certain habits. And in that example, the habit is going to the gym. So if you have that strong, powerful why at 5:30 in the morning when you're getting up to go to the gym, that's going to drive you to get out of bed compared to just going to the gym, being very surface level.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make, because when you think about so much of the decisions you make in life, a lot of it can be triggered by environmental factors, and it might just be something silly like you're trying to attempt to do something because someone else has done it, or one of your friends is doing it and it's working for them. But the thing that you also have to remember when we're coming back to your true meaning, like what you just said, Gina, is if you're giving yourself these tasks to achieve that don't really have that deeper meaning to yourself, but then you're failing at them, but then you're also kind of reiterating to yourself that you're not good enough or you can't achieve them, you're also setting up yourself to fail in a way because you're picking things or you're trying to achieve things that don't necessarily actually have that deeper meaning for you. So it is something to really think about when you're wanting to achieve new goals or set new habits, right? Make sure that it's something that really is important to you personally.
It's a really good point. So don't set habits that you don't care about. Don't try and start habits that you don't actually care about. Make sure it is something that's meaningful to you. It's also important to note that emotions create habits. So if you want to implement a habit, really try and accelerate the meaning and significance of that for you.
Yeah, one of the lines that I heard most recently in one of the habits books that I was reading, I think it was Tiny Habits from BJ Fogg, was that people don't change from feeling bad about themselves. People change and create these habits from feeling good. So that feeling of, you know, that bit of dopamine hit that you get from feeling good, from achieving something, is what makes you want to keep going and keep achieving this same goal. So yeah, that definitely comes into it. We're going to talk about, firstly, one of the most recognized, I guess, techniques used in Atomic Habits from James Clear. So the 4 stages of all habits, being good or bad, and that is cue, craving, response, and reward. So do you want to chat through those specifically a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the cue being the first component, that refers to the trigger that initiates our brain to move towards a certain behavior. So for example, the cue could be a visual cue. It could be something you hear. It could be a feeling, like a kinesthetic feeling that you have. It could be a taste or a smell. So one example we've got here could be your stomach rumbling being a trigger to go and seek food. Or it might be that gross feeling in your mouth the first thing in the morning to trigger you to go and clean your teeth. So basically there's some sort of trigger or cue that can initiate you moving towards a habit, be it good or bad or just something that you do.
And the second one is craving. So that refers to the motivational force or desire behind the habit. So what you crave is not the habit itself, but the change in state that it delivers. So for example, when you're not motivated to brush your teeth, you're not motivated in the morning to get up and brush your teeth for the sake of just, you know, brushing your teeth.
I really want to brush my teeth.
Yeah, like that's not really that enjoyable, but what you're motivated by is that feeling of clean mouth afterwards. So it's like the same as you're not motivated to that 5 minutes of cleaning your workstation or your desk. Like that's not the motivating part. You're motivated by the feeling that you get after when you sit down and you can complete the rest of your work knowing that you've got a nice fresh workspace to work on. Yeah,
that you've set up the environment in a way that's going to help you perform really well for the rest of the day.
Yeah, so that's what we mean by craving. And third one.
The next one is response. So this refers to the actual habit performed. Whether a response occurs will depend on the level of craving or motivation and how much friction or how much of a barrier there is in completing the behavior. So a habit or response will only occur if you're actually capable of doing it. So essentially, this is what is your response in response to the craving that you had.
Yeah. And so when you are setting habits, that is one huge thing to take into account when setting tiny habits, basically, is that friction and barrier. Like it needs to be something that's actually also doable for you, for you to be able to respond. You wouldn't want to set, I mean, it's pretty basic, right? It sounds basic, but you wouldn't want to set yourself a goal to do something that's not realistic for you to do. I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, but
get up and run a marathon first thing in the morning, like when you've done no groundwork or preparation for it.
Or if you have to start work in an hour, like you're not going to get through a marathon in 60 minutes, do you know what I mean? So like that's just basic example of that. And the last one is reward. The response delivers a reward, and rewards are the end goal of the habit. So the reward is a little bit different to the craving itself, because the craving is like you craving that feeling of having a tidy desk to work from. The reward is actually that signal that is sent to your brain that gives you that, would you say, hit of dopamine?
Yeah. So it's almost, it can be put as a celebration, or it's you acknowledging within yourself that satisfaction, that reward you give yourself potentially.
Yeah. So that moves us into that next part after reward, and that is chatting about how emotion creates habits. And BJ Fogg, from the author of Tiny Habits, is a really big advocate for this, and that is celebration. So basically that moment of celebrating after you've achieved a habit. So the single most important skill in behavior change is feeling successful, which is a quote from BJ Fogg from his book.
And feeling successful helps us to wire in new habits, and it helps us to continue being motivated to do more.
Yeah.
It actually used to be taught, like in the past, that frequency or repetition was the key to habit formation, but this is now recognized as an older way of thinking. What is critical or crucial is that the individual has a strong positive emotion connected to the behavior. So a new habit can essentially be wired in immediately and instantly if there's a strong enough why, as I mentioned earlier, and a positive emotional association.
So in summary, for those 4 points, the cue is about noticing the reward, the craving is about wanting the reward, and the response is about obtaining the reward. So we chase rewards because they serve us 2 purposes, and that is to satisfy us or to teach us.
So up next, we're looking at creating a new habit. So when we refer to this habit loop and creating new habits, there are a few things that become apparent to ensure the habits are achievable.
Both James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and BJ Fogg, the author of Tiny Habits, both explain the importance of starting with tiny habits and then building upward from there. So when we say start small, I feel like a lot of people definitely underestimate this step. Because, for example, I can think of a common one even just with me and my clients, and that is I want to drink more water in a day. So I'm going to drink 3 liters of water in a day. That's my goal. And people often skip to this thinking, oh, that should be easy. I should be able to just do that. Like, it's not a hard thing. But when we are saying tiny and scaling your habits back, we actually mean really tiny, don't
really
we?
Simple.
Yeah.
So an example could be if your goal is to drink 3 liters of water a day, maybe if you're not drinking hardly anything anyway, starting with aiming to get 1 liter of water per day. And that might mean waking up first thing in the morning and having 1 glass of water. So it's starting small and having those little triggers throughout the day to drink 1 single glass of water, rather than expecting yourself to drink 3 liters across the day without a plan to get there. We need to have those tiny steps.
Yeah. So it could be honestly something as small as, you know, getting that kind of goal moving for the day. It might be every morning when I have my coffee, I'm going to drink a glass of water. Like
before having the coffee.
Yeah, before you have your coffee.
Yeah.
So starting really small. What's another example?
Well, BJ Fogg had a really good example. So he wanted to integrate the habit of flossing his teeth. So he basically told himself after brushing his teeth, he would floss 1 singular tooth. And that would be his start small.
Yeah, because basically all he was teaching himself to do is that automatic habit of toothbrush down, pick up the floss and start. And that was literally the most single thing that he worked on at the start, literally flossing 1 tooth. And then he goes on to explain about, obviously, you know, after that feeling of, yes, I've done it, like I did it. He grew that to then, okay, I'm already doing this. I may as well do another tooth, or I may as well do another. And then before you know it, that's turned into flossing after every time brushing your teeth. So,
and what's important about this is it's easy to shrug it off and go, oh, flossing 1 tooth, what's the point in doing that, right? But really, it's so basic, but you're trying to teach yourself to just start. It's triggering the beginning of a habit. And then, like Alice just said, once you're there in the moment, you may as well just floss all of your top teeth. You know, you may not have done the bottom, but you start doing all of the top, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
The next important idea when it comes to creating a new habit is actually on purpose creating cues to trigger yourself to perform the new habit.
Yeah. So the next thing that also to think, so for example, placing your water counter next to the coffee machine in the morning, so that when you wake up to make your coffee, your water glass is already sitting next to the coffee machine. That will prompt you to drink that glass of water.
Yes. Yeah. So having that water, that glass out ready to go as a trigger. It's a visual, like I mentioned before, there's visual or kinesthetic or maybe an auditory cue. So that's a visual cue to trigger you to have that water. Yeah.
Another cue for a lot of people I know who are wanting to get up in the morning to go to the gym. Like it might not be getting out of bed. That's the hard thing, but it's actually getting out of bed and getting changed to go to the gym. So they will lay out their clothing in the morning next to the bed. So in the morning when you wake up and you're not quite awake, you don't have to think about, you don't have to go through that process of going through the wardrobe, figuring out what you're going to wear. It's laid out, it's ready to go. You don't have to think, you can just go straight into it. And once you've got your gym clothes on, you're like, okay, may as well go.
Yeah, you're trying to make it as simple as possible for yourself.
Yeah.
Another thing that people often do is having their alarm at the other end of the room. So they have to physically get out of bed to go and turn off the alarm as well.
Yeah. And that's a great cue for just getting up without snoozing, right? Because once you're up to do that, you're already up. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. So like I mentioned before, the cue can be, it might be a location, it might be a certain environment that's the cue. It may be a certain time of day, it may be a certain behavior or a trigger or a smell. So there's so many different types of cues. So it's really important to reflect for yourself on what is the cue that you're going to associate with your new habit that you add into your life. So that's something that's going to be more a personal thing that you need to reflect on and identify that cue for yourself.
Yeah. So when we're also thinking about creating cues or creating new habits, another thing that we really have to think about is identity-based habits. So do you want to chat through a little bit about what is identity-based habits? What do we mean by that?
Yeah. So often people will have outcome-based habits. So an outcome might be lose weight, put simply, right? So that's the outcome. You're purely trying to integrate a habit to achieve that outcome. The next layer may be process. So a process-based habit. So the process might be changing a system or changing, trying to stop having a cluttered desk. And the system is having order and having your books stacked in a certain way or laying out the certain way of organizing your desk. But the third and most important, deepest layer is actually changing your identity. And I've mentioned this in previous podcasts as well, but your identity essentially is who you are or who you wish to become. And so this can be way more powerful than simply having an outcome or a process-based goal. You're actually reflecting on who is it that I am or who do I want to become? And what would they do? This new version of me or this person I want to become, and making it identity-based habit.
So I was just thinking of an example for that. So maybe let's say going to the gym is what the habit is. So if you were to look at identity-based habits for going to the gym, an outcome-based habit would be, I want to go to the gym. Like, because everyone else is going to the gym, I'm going to go to the gym. That's my goal. That's just the outcome.
That's it. Yeah.
The process might be, I want to work going into the gym into part of my morning routine or something, for the sake of improving your morning routine, I guess.
So you get up, you do your at-home parts of the day, and then you go to the gym, then come back and get ready to go to work. So you're saying the process of slotting it into that morning process.
Yeah, you want it to become a part of that process of your day. But then going to the gym, referring to an identity-based goal is a little bit different, right? So
it's more so you are you are now the kind of person that goes to the gym, that is healthy, that is fit, that is potentially confident and attractive, or whatever those meanings are for you. That's going to be completely individual for you. But that knowing inside of you that I'm the kind of person that executes, that doesn't sleep in. I'm the kind of person that follows through on my commitments to myself.
Yeah, I think and there's a big difference between setting a goal that's like, I just want to go to the gym. Like, I should start going to the gym. I want to go to the gym, versus I want to become a person who is fit, who is healthier. I want to be that person who embodies that lifestyle where they get up and they train and they exercise every day. So there's like two big contrasts between those two, right? When it comes to mindset, when you think about goal setting.
Exactly. And so what I encourage you guys to do is reflect on what it is that what is the habit that you want to integrate into your life, and really reflect on if it is if it is an outcome or a process-based goal. Be honest with yourself and think, okay, so how can I dig a bit deeper with this and make this more identity-based? So it's not just about a certain outcome. How can you make it about who you are, who you're becoming, and how important that is to you? Yeah, cool. Next up, we are looking at adjusting or breaking away from current habits. So we don't want to call them bad habits necessarily, although a lot of people may think of it as, I don't want to do that bad habit anymore. However, we're looking at moving away from current habits that no longer serve you.
Yeah. So one of the first things that you could do in this instance is to pair a current habit with another good habit that you want to implement. So let's use, what example could we use here? Someone who eats a block of chocolate every night for dessert, right? That's a current habit that you have. Every night after dinner, you grab a block of chocolate, and that's just part of your current routine, and you kind of want to steer away from that. You don't want that to be a part of your habit anymore. In this case, you would be adding in another good habit with this habit that's already embedded. So it might be having your block of chocolate every night with a cup of tea.
Yeah, a cup of tea or a sugar-free hot chocolate or a water.
Yeah.
And then as you move through the process, you may then start to have half a block of chocolate with your cup of tea or your water, and then a quarter, and then a piece, you know. So basically you've started to substitute or pair the previous habit with a good new habit until eventually maybe at night you just have the cup of tea. You know, you don't need the block of chocolate anymore because you've weaned yourself off it.
Another really good one that I can think of, pairing bad habits with good, well, like we said, doesn't necessarily need to be bad, but let's see, say social media scrolling, for example, or being distracted by social media. Maybe it's something that gives you a lot of anxiety throughout your day, and you're thinking, I need to cut back down on my social media time. So another really good habit to pair with that would be every time I grab my phone to go on social media, I do a set of deep breathing, like breath work. So grab my phone, I'm going to take like 3 deep breaths. Like if you're someone who, you know, wants to, or someone who struggles with anxiety or that sort of thing. So that just might be a habit that you then start to implement in with that habit, to slow down your breathing and just to have that like 5 seconds of mindfulness.
Yeah, and almost gives you more clarity. And perhaps in that moment you go, oh, actually,
I'm not going to grab my phone.
Or maybe like, I don't want to do this. Like you've given yourself that time and space to just go, hang on a sec. I'm performing a habit. And now I have a choice because you've just taken those 3 deep breaths. That's such a good example. Also, another one could be reducing. So for example, reducing, again, let's talk about social media or screen time because it is so apparent for our generation as well. But if you usually of an evening before bed scroll for an hour or 2, perhaps you could jump onto your phone, go to the timer app, and maybe set a timer for 30 minutes. Then continue to go back to your social media accounts and do what you're doing. But what's going to happen is you're going to be interrupted at that 30-minute mark. That alarm's going to go off, and that's going to trigger you to back off, to reduce, right? So you're not cutting out social media altogether. That's probably a bit impractical for a lot of people. But what you're doing is you're giving yourself that timer, and you're giving yourself permission to do it, but you're going to interrupt yourself, and then maybe start your nighttime going to bed routine.
Yeah, and you can work on that too. You can start to reduce that lower and lower if you wanted to. Another example could be alcohol. If you're in the habit of drinking multiple glasses of wine with dinner at night, and maybe it's something that you don't want to do anymore, you want to move away from having so much alcohol during the week, it would be quite impractical just to say, I'm going to go cut all alcohol out from Monday to Friday. A lot of people find that really hard. So you know, a simple way would be reducing it. So I'm going to start with having 1 glass instead of 2, then half a glass the next week. Then that might reduce to every second night you'll have 1 glass. Basically keep reducing that down to whatever your goal is. Maybe it's just have alcohol on the weekend. And
also think about, you know, what you value as well. So for some people, it might be really good idea to purchase smaller bottles of wine rather than the big bottles, because that way there's no waste, right? You open a small bottle of wine, you know, I'm talking one of the single serves, share it with your partner, and then it's gone, it's empty, you're done. You know, there's not another 3/4 of a bottle of wine there going off necessarily. Also, substitution can be another one. So substituting a habit for something else. A really common one that a lot of people will do if they get stuck into a habit of consuming lots of Cokes or soft drinks during the day at work, they'll substitute from a full sugar normal Coke to a Diet Coke. And then eventually they'll substitute that for a water. Sometimes it's not always best to go straight from a sugary Coke to a water. That might be too much of a drastic change for some people. And so it's substitution.
And another common one is like snacks in the cupboard, like crisps or something, like, you know, getting a box of crisps out of your cupboard to snack on, you could just slowly implement something that's probably a little more healthier than what the current ones that you have. So you're not saying, I'm going to quit having something after dinner while I'm watching TV. You don't need to quit it, but you could just substitute it for something that's a little more healthier. And like with reducing as well, you can kind of slowly adapt as you go. So it might go from, snacking on a lot of crisps, or I think you call it chips here in Australia, actually. Yeah. Sorry, I've still got a bit of like the UK chips. But yeah, you might end up, 6 or 10 or 12 or a couple months down the track, you may have reduced that down to, having a piece of fruit or something while you're watching TV. So you can really kind of slowly merge that.
And a couple of other examples could be being entertained by an audiobook or reading rather than social media. So substituting that social media scrolling. So still something that you're interested in, but you're kind of moving yourself away from that. You're substituting. Or on purpose, just taking the stairs up a floor rather than jumping in the elevator. So that's another substitution.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. Next one is in regards to breaking away from a current habit or an undesirable habit is identity. So reflecting on the habit you're trying to break and noticing that is not me anymore. That is not who I am, and really tying it to your identity of the new version of you. So that's a pretty internal one. It's a very personalized one. But if that's a habit, if it's a current habit you're doing that just does not serve you, and it's something you do not want to take into your future, then having that conversation with yourself and knowing that that's not who you are now.
Yeah. And I think another one that we will also touch on is removing yourself from the old environment, because it's important to note, this isn't always possible for every habit, but a lot of the time it can be possible, and it can really work for some people, to remove yourself or remove whatever the cue is from your environment altogether. So a simple example for that might be phone scrolling during work, getting distracted. Remove your phone, put it in a different room, so you don't have that in your environment at all. Or it's something on a larger scale, could be something to do with your social group and your social settings, and actually moving away from that.
That's a really good one. To say, let's just as an example, say a certain group of friends every Sunday at lunchtime they go and get a greasy lunch and they drink, and I'm talking drink for hours, right? So that environment, whenever you go into that environment, you're going to want to be involved and mingle with and be in that environment, and that's going to then lead to potentially having that food and drinking those drinks. So if that's something you don't want to do anymore, then essentially not attending that that environment would be a way to remove yourself from it. Or eating before you go, being there for the start and still seeing your friends, but then leaving before the drinking begins.
So there's lots of kind of different ways you can do that, but it's definitely one that can help. For me personally as well, when it comes to food, removal is the easiest thing for me. It's if you're trying to get away from the habit of constantly snacking all the time on bad or sweets in the cupboard, because I have a sweet tooth. I don't buy sweets. They're not in the cupboard. So if I do want a snack, I've got fresh fruit or something in there, I just grab that instead,
Totally.
But if I had that stuff available, looking at me, I'd probably make the decision to go for that instead.
It's so easy.
So much easier for me personally just to remove that out of the equation.
I can totally relate. Recently I was given a box of chocolates. They're just sitting in the fridge, but every so often they're just there. Just grab one, but if it wasn't there, I wouldn't think about it. Wouldn't be interested. It wouldn't be there. So that's a really good one. Also, like we mentioned before, it's important to have steps and stages. Don't expect yourself to go from one extreme to the other. Or, a common example is people having beers, or we have mentioned wine already, but having alcohol and just going straight to water. Perhaps it is better for you to transition to something you really enjoy, like a sweet orange juice, and then shift to a sparkling mineral water, and then shift to a water. So allowing yourself to have those stages. Because sometimes change is hard. Stopping a habit is hard. We might make it sound easier in the way we're communicating, but sometimes it is freaking hard. So you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself to go through those stages.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's move on to mindset.
So to finish up, we really wanted to make the point that ultimately we all have bad days, and we have days where things won't go to plan. And it's important to realize that these days are going to arise into the future. It's okay though. What's most important is that you are flexible and you're able to bounce back and get on with it as soon as possible. Try not to let one bad day turn into 2 bad days, turn into a bad week, and so on and so forth, and kind of snowball. We want to know that just because you have one day where you don't execute on your new habit or your new way of being, you can always have that day and then get back into it the following day.
Yeah, there's one quote that I really love that I always refer to with some of my clients as a reminder, and that is, it's not the amount of times that you fall down. I'm sure we've all heard that quote, but it's the amount of times that you get back up, which is so true, honestly, because people get bogged down in that fall down or the failures, thinking that it shouldn't happen in the first place. But a lot of the time, success does come from being able to get back on and move on from it after. So if you do have those days, I think having that mindset to just move forward and keep going, keep getting back on, keep trying again. And that's really important. Don't expect it to be easy, I guess, and don't expect yourself to have to fall to that 100% commitment level straight away.
And I'm glad you brought that up because it's all part of your journey, your individual journey. And sometimes, I can definitely reflect on my own life, but you want to go through the shit times, you want to go through the challenges to then be able to move forward. You're basically accumulating tools and resources for the future version of you. So that's super important. And what's another good example? What is it? The light bulb was the 11,000th invention. It wasn't he failed 10,999 times, and then it was the 11,000th. It's so important that any great people ever, they've always, no one's had it easy.
No, of course. They failed and they've just got up and they've tried again, and they've kept pushing. So definitely remember that when you're trying to implement new habits. And,
similar to what we've just been saying, but plan for chaos. Life is hectic. A lot of you listening might have kids or, busy jobs and so many factors going on. So being ready for the chaos and being kind to yourself and having flexibility, we were just saying, shit's going to happen. If you slip up or miss a day, get back on track quickly. That's so important. Being kind to yourself, like I just mentioned, and also thinking long term. So if you miss a day or two every month, then that's only 6% of your year. So you have the other 94% of the year to be on track. So don't let that day or two cause you to quit.
Yeah. And I think just for our listeners as well, I think if you are interested in, learning more detail around creating new habits, I personally have read Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. And I've also read some of James Clear's Atomic Habits.
I've listened to it.
And both of those are amazing books and good places to start.
Yes.
I've definitely learned a lot myself. So if you are, interested in learning more detail, I would highly recommend either of those two.
And we'll pop the links to those books in the show notes as well for you guys. But they're fantastic books.
On that note as well, audiobooks. That's a great thing too. If you don't get time to read, guys. Audiobooks are so good.
Good.
Yeah, you can pop them on while you're doing, the washing or while you're driving or.
And also while I'm training, I'll sometimes listen to audiobooks. That's a really good one while you're doing just stuff around the house.
Yeah.
If you're doing low focus tasks, there's some bandwidth left to be listening to a book. Obviously, if you're trying to work, you're not going to be listening to an audiobook because they both require some level of attention.
Yeah.
But if you're doing small basic tasks like walking or housework, that's the perfect opportunity.
Yeah. I love personally listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something when I'm doing my makeup or just those little tasks getting ready in the morning.
Awesome. So guys, to wrap up the podcast today, I'd love you to reflect on what is a habit that you'd like to start to move away from. So first of all, bringing awareness to that, and that's going to be a personal thing for you. And then noticing how are you going to start to move away from that habit? Are you going to pair it with a good habit? Are you going to reduce it? Are you going to substitute it? or are you going to reflect more on your identity and the identity that you want to move towards?
Great. I think we can wrap it up there for today. If any of our listeners have any questions, reach out and let us know, and we can elaborate a little further if you want us to. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in, guys, and we can't wait to
see you on the next one. We can't wait to wait. What are we waiting for? So good. And you'll notice I'm up in the lovely Gold Coast with Alice. So
I know,
it's
our
been nice. First podcast together for episode 13, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing, guys. All right. Have a beautiful day.
Chat to you soon.
See you on the next one.
The Body and Beyond podcast is for information purposes only. This podcast does not constitute advice or services, and the statements and views of the hosts and guests are not medical advice. The information provided should not be used for treatment or diagnosis purposes. Please discuss any information from this podcast with your healthcare professional before making any changes to your lifestyle.